Welcome to episode 11 of the Just a Moment Ago podcast. We have JJ back with us today.
How's it going, man?
Good. Today we're going to be discussing psychedelics. We're going to discuss
The medical
that,
benefits.
but other things as well, like types of it, our personal experiences, positive and negative effects of it, just different things about it, you know, how it affects your body as well. For you, just to start off, where did you first get introduced to it, or why did you even consider a psychedelic?
Studying a lot of holistic medicine, which has been very therapeutic, especially in the last year. I want to say 90 to 95% of all Western medicine is they just throw a pill at everything. We talked about that in other episodes. And then you get side effects from those medications, so they give you another med. And then, you know, something like getting stomach aches from all that medicine, so you get another pill. It's profit before the patients.
Right.
I don't know, have you ever noticed that there's no cure for just about anything?
Yep. There's always more pills to throw at it, but never an end.
No end in sight, yeah. And it's something that I'm actually very passionate about.
You're saying that your beginning reason for wanting to get into psychedelics was medicinal right away? Or was it more on like the let's see what hallucinogens are about, psychedelics are about, and then you discovered the medicinal? Because from my personal experience, it started as more of a let's see what it's about fun thing. Exactly. But then as I did more, research, I was like, wait a minute, there's a lot here. And now I'm more into the medicinal side of it than just wanting to take it to do something fun.
100%. I'm glad you said that perfectly, Dave. I think I was maybe 16 or 17. And I remember the first time trying them. It was not for any medicinal.
Right.
Because we were 16, 17. That was definitely, pot wasn't even legal yet.
Right. So what are some different types of psychedelics that people should be aware of? There's mushrooms, LSD, DMT.
Hallucinogens.
Right. Psychedelics, hallucinogens.
Right. Okay. There is...
Just get the ones that are out there, just
mushrooms.
So, right.
There's, there's psychoactive mushrooms, and then there's non-psychoactive. And then when it comes to... You say it just perfectly. You just said it a little bit ago. Say it. Psilocybin, and then you...
Psilocybin cubensis, is that what you're saying?
Yes, there you go. LSD is a little more synthetic.
Mm-hmm.
My knowledge on it was created by a Swiss scientist in the 1940s, if I'm not mistaken.
Is that the riding the bike around town and he discovered it? Is that who you're talking about?
Riding the bike around town.
Right. I heard a story that the person who discovered LSD took it, and then he was riding around town on his bike when it started.
And you see that brings up a really funny... There seems to always be a legend around this area.
Right.
Of a guy by the name of... I don't know if he's passed or anything, but this obviously isn't his real name, so we can say it. His name is Acid Andy.
Mm-hmm.
And the legend of him is he was from Altoona. When you said the bike, I think that got mixed in there. That brings up another good point, how just stories get thrown in there and stuff gets mixed up. But from the best of my knowledge, this is honestly a true story, because I lived in Altoona, and it's a smaller town.
It says, so this is just where I get that from, Albert Hofmann. Have you heard of him?
Is he a Swiss scientist?
Yes.
Okay.
Hoffman didn't discover the drug's hallucinogenic effects until 1943, when he accidentally ingested a small amount and perceived extraordinary shapes with intense kaleidoscopic play of colors. 3 days later, on April 19, 1943, he took a larger dose. As Hoffman rode home from work on his bicycle, as World War II restrictions made automobile travel off limits, he experienced the world's first intentional acid trip.
Wow.
Years later, April 19th came to be celebrated by some recreational LSD users as Bicycle Day.
Huh.
That's what I had heard many years ago.
Okay.
One of the first times that I had used, or actually it was like the fourth time I had used LSD. Someone told me that story.
I at least got the Swiss scientist part
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Did I say 1940s?
Yeah, I think so. You
Or
did.
did I say, yeah,
I'm pretty sure you did.
See,
But that's where things can get a little, stories and things always get diced up a little bit.
Big time. And
right.
I think probably every city that's big enough probably has a guy who's probably taking too much acid.
Right. Yeah. So discussing the different kinds, let's, how do these different kinds compare? Because, mushrooms are not as strong as LSD. And then I feel like mescaline, peyote, things like that are very, very strong.
That is something for like ceremonial purposes. It's very long. Personally, I've done mushrooms, LSD, trying to think back when it comes to hallucinogens.
See, I've just done mushrooms, LSD, and mescaline.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that.
So for me, if we're talking
huh?
about how they compare, it would be, shrooms would be the weakest, and then it would be LSD, and then the mescaline. Because I've had the most intense on mescaline, but LSD is also intense, but I would say that mescaline is much more intense in my personal experience.
Well, in my experience, LSD has less medicinal benefits because I've known more than a couple people that they liked LSD, but they were absolutely terrified of mushrooms.
Right, and that seems backwards to me because mushrooms are so much weaker as far as visuals and things like that. With mushrooms, though, you get more of like the colorful and the waviness, where with the LSD and things, it's a lot more actual hallucinations coming at you.
In my opinion, I don't like LSD, and it's weaker, but anything that isn't natural,
right,
I just don't really care for. I just noticed that, yeah, it is. It's kind of funny. That just shows another great example of how everybody's brain chemistry, and I think anybody that's in recovery has probably heard, from somebody who isn't suffering from the disease of addiction,
right,
where they say, well, so-and-so, this person quit smoking cigarettes, so why can't you?
Yeah.
And it's one of those frustrating things where, I mean, that's a subject for a whole nother day, I guess. But
right. So you said you had experience with just two types?
I have tried. Now this is the spirit molecule, DMT.
Right. I was wondering. I thought that you had said you tried DMT.
I did, but I have not crossed over and gotten the amazing benefits.
So you more were just light dosing it?
It was in a cartridge.
Oh, okay. It was one of those cart situations?
Yes, and I don't think that they're exactly very potent, and
was it low quality, it seemed like?
It seemed like, and
do you remember?
It wasn't something that, it was somebody had passed it to me.
Was it like a homemade one? Was it a brand from a company?
In this day and age, though, DMT, to the best of my knowledge, is not legal.
Well, right, but there could still be people, certain companies making them through some
in
sort of
cartridge and in a pretty cool box too.
You know how companies will get involved with things even if they're not legal sometimes.
Black market,
so
right.
I mean, it's not impossible for it to be out there.
Not at all in this day and age. Definitely not.
Right.
So yeah, brings out a perfect example, especially for young kids. Don't trust anything that anybody gives you.
Yeah.
I don't care how real it looks.
Mm-hmm.
There's a chance it's counterfeit.
Right.
And if you don't believe me, just look it up on Google.
Yeah, with some of that stuff, if you haven't seen the package it came in, don't do it. You need to know for sure where it came from.
because that's something that's very, very dear to me. Very serious because I've lost a lot of friends over the years.
Yeah.
Good people that
Take the wrong things.
And they trusted the person that gave it to them because that person, they counterfeit things so good that...
Oh, for sure. One thing that, for me, with the psychedelics, you know, from the time I was introduced at 17 until probably 26, 27, I didn't take it seriously as like a medicinal thing. After I had multiple experiences with it through those years, I started to do more research and then get into more of the medicinal side of it. And now today, that's where I look at it, and I don't look at it as a fun thing. There's a lot of good qualities that can come out of the medicinal side of it, and it's something that hasn't gotten talked about a lot, but it's going to be talked about more and more as we progress into the future, because psychedelics are on the cutting edge of medicine right now.
And we're talking people for 20 years who have failed every kind of treatment for severe depression.
Right.
Severe PTSD, severe anxiety.
That's what I was going to say. One of the big benefits is PTSD. It helps with PTSD. It helps with chronic pain. And one other positive thing is they're non-addictive.
100%, man.
You gain a tolerance from using psychedelics, so you actually have to take tolerance breaks. If you continue to use, you will lose the effects of it.
Yes, and that brings up the benefits that I got from it that absolutely changed my life to the point where it's something that I'm very, very passionate about.
Right.
I've said before, I was given a lot of different painkillers, a lot of antidepressants, you know, and I just seen a thing the other day that America officially, even though we make up a third of the whole world's population, we consume 75% of the world's pharmaceuticals.
Right, I've heard that before too, yeah.
And that's probably a stat. I'm pretty sure
No, I've heard that. I've actually heard a stat that's around that before as well.
3 or 5%. It's ridiculous.
It is. When I heard it too, I remember thinking it's a very ridiculous number. I do want to get into a little bit of personal experience, but before we go there, let's also just discuss a little bit of what the negative side effects can be too, because you can get an altered sense of reality where the hallucinations become frightening. You can get paranoia. You can get a psychosis where you have visual disturbances even after the experience for up to a few
lifetime.
Some people have actually had a psychosis where the visual disturbances last to a few weeks. So if you don't dose properly, you can actually have issues with it.
Yeah.
And there is actually one other thing that is hallucinogen persisting perception disorder. Have you heard of that? HPPD? It's when the user has flashbacks to the psychedelic that they took.
That's usually with LSD, from what I've heard. But I think anything that alters your brain chemistry definitely can...
Right, so hallucinogenic persisting perception disorder is when the user has flashbacks to the trip.
Okay. You see, I have heard about that, and to the best of my knowledge, that has to do with LSD, because for some reason LSD gets in your spinal fluid.
Does it have to do with more that it's synthetic, or is it that...
I don't know. I know it has something to do with... LSD has something to do with the spinal fluid part.
Right.
I don't know. It sounds kind of like a joke, but like people who used to do a lot of LSD, like going to the chiropractor, because when they get their back cracked, they have a trip. I've heard you hear a lot of funny things.
There's a lot of stories and rumors like that go around with people.
Right. Or I believe it's the only way to test for it is through your spinal fluid.
I've actually heard that too, but I'm sure there's probably other ways for them to find out.
Yeah, probably. I think they actually...
One thing too, though, that we have to remember is it is actually federally illegal. It is a Schedule 1, which means that it's non-medical.
Are you talking
psychedelic.
They're legal state
right.
in
That's
Oregon,
what I was gonna say. Is many states
California
are doing psychedelic reform, but federally it is still a Schedule 1,
right.
No medical use.
I think actually marijuana is still federally illegal.
Right. But I mean, think about though,
or
with
did they pass that? I don't.
Psychedelics being, they're trying to do more reform on that. You know, in the future, it will become part of medicine.
And
Like,
they're already, the pharmaceutical companies are already, because the word's out now.
Right.
To the point where they can't hide it no more.
Mm.
But they're already trying to make a synthetic version, a pill.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yep.
And it's actually more ingrained
me...
in America than I think people even know. Have you ever heard this quote? Tim Ferriss once said, "The billionaires I know, almost without exception, use hallucinogens on a regular basis."
I just can't think of his name right now. Used it when he thought of the iPhone. What was his name?
Steve Jobs?
Steve Jobs was I don't remember if he did LSD or he was mainly microdosing.
I don't know either. I'll have to look that
I know
up.
he was definitely using LSD though.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it publicly multiple times.
Right. So when you're using, right now, if you're trying to have an experience, not microdose, an actual
Macrodosing.
if you're macrodosing.
Right.
And you are trying to have that experience, what is your intention of having that experience? Talk about it early on, and then as you know. So early on, what was your first to have fun? What was your intention in that?
It was definitely, when I was young, I don't think there was any knowledge of it being medically beneficial. So it was just like smoking pot, in my opinion, when I was 16 or 17. But I do remember, I will never forget it, because I was at a music event and it was very intense.
Right.
I think anybody's first time using any hallucinogen is pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, I had people that were quite, experienced in it, but I was still very overwhelmed by the experience.
Right.
Until the place that where this event took place, it was at a campground, and it was a pretty big Trampled by Turtles, like bands of that nature.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It was like it's a 2 or 3 day event, not like, it was kind of like Woodstock, but like a mini Woodstock.
Right.
Folk music. But this was a very old campground, and they had water fountains there. And I don't know if you remember, those old water fountains when we were kids. They were from like the 1950s.
I think I know what you're talking about.
And they tasted more like rust.
Yep.
Than they did water.
Yeah.
There
was one where I went to school. I remember it pretty well, actually.
Oh, you actually see the rust.
You can see it. Yeah.
Like from and you think about it, you're drinking that. But anyway, being so young and inexperienced, I probably, being a young kid, took way too much. And when I drank, being under the influence of those mushrooms, when I was very thirsty, and I drank a lot of that water, and it tasted like pure rust.
Oh no.
It tasted like I took the oldest screw that I found full of rust and like dropped it in a 8-ounce glass of water.
Yeah.
And I was so messed up that after I drank all that water, I thought that all that rust was inside my body.
I can see thinking that, though, while you're doing something like that. Yeah.
And I was not talking. I was sitting in a circle, and after a while, visually, they could see that I was pretty, definitely dysphoria, not euphoria.
Right.
But I threw up. And I throw up quite a bit.
That's usually a symptom, though, when you're...
And it is. It's very normal.
Very often a symptom.
But after I threw up is when it's like all my worries the benefits,
Yep.
the bliss, the everything of, and this is something that really is proven with it too, because scientists, doctors are studying it now, is it opens up parts of your brain that we don't even know. Because look at how intoxicated, or I don't want to say intoxicated.
It's not, it isn't, it's an intoxicating thing, but
You're
it does
definitely
it
under the
in
influence.
a different way, though. It brings you more into a focus type of way if you do it right. If you're dosing high, then it's really going to make you think outside and you're going to be kind of all over the place if you're having a high dose, you know, but you need to do that stuff with the right people. You know, your high doses and things need to, right, for sure.
It's a trial and error type thing, and I definitely...
So your intention is based on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to have like a full-on experience, you're going to take a higher dose, and if you're trying to get more of the medicinal focus, you know, PTSD sort of benefits from it, then you're going to take a very low, very small dose to not get those type of hallucinogenic things that happen. What do you do to prepare to take psychedelics? Do you remember doing anything to prepare? I mean, one thing I did, I drank a lot of water. Back when we were younger, people used to say things like take a lot of vitamin C, do things like that. So we did that, but whether it was fully helpful or not is another story.
I believe that is ecstasy.
If that's, I mean, maybe that's what,
I know
when it was mescaline is what they were saying. Take vitamin C, you know.
I've heard that too. Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things that you don't know.
I think it's just a placebo thing where in your mind you think you're doing something to help yourself while you're on this, even though you're really not doing much. You're just,
I guess you're getting that vitamin C,
vitamin C pills, like the chewable orange ones, you know.
And those do taste good.
Yeah. And it's actually kind of hard to eat when you are, you know, on a psychedelic. So something little like that, like a little orange vitamin C or something, unless it's really chalky, that can get weird. Because textures are weird when you're on psychedelics.
Brings up another funny story is I like the taste of mushrooms.
I do not.
I know you don't.
I cannot handle it. Goodness, I can't handle it.
Well, you have a weak stomach, though.
I gotta make a smoothie and just bury it in there and just big gulp. Boop.
I forgot about that. You really don't like the taste of them.
Oh, let's discuss some personal experiences here. Like, what was your first experience? Was what?
How old I was?
Just what did you take for your first experience? Was it LSD? Was it mushrooms?
No, it was as far as hallucinogens, it was at the story I'm just telling you. At the Camp Out Roots Festival.
Right. This is your first
time doing hallucinogens.
Okay.
Yeah. I had used plenty of marijuana.
Right, no, prior. I'm talking about psychedelics only right now.
Yeah, it was mushrooms the first time, and looking back, I don't even remember now today when I'm very knowledgeable because of research.
Right. I do know that you have a lot of different research you've done about this type of stuff. So.
Oh yeah, it's something that I'll defend forever.
Right.
Because of how much it cures. And I'm not going to say, and I'm glad that you said that, like how that it's not 100% safe. Just like how...
Nothing's 100% safe.
Well, there's a lot of people that, with the marijuana argument, you even take 50 to 100 people that are all marijuana advocates, and some will advocate that it's 100% safe, that there's no problem with it at all. As much as I am for natural, I still think when it comes to when your brain is still developing, anything should be... Because your brain, up until you're 25, to the best of my knowledge, is still developing.
Right.
And anything that you
are going to use as far as substance should be in moderation.
If you're going to do it, yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Because that's something that now that we're in our 30s, a big reason why we're doing this is to help.
It's more, it's very much so to discuss what we've been through, and hopefully other people will understand and not make some of the same mistakes and make better choices with what they do by hearing other people's stories and realizing when you make choices to use certain things, there's a lot of consequences that come with that. It's not just you're going to use for well and life is whatever, now you're good. No, you're going to have consequences that come along long term with it. A lot of people do. That's what this is more about, is just showing people the long-term consequences of addictions and what goes on.
Exactly. And it's one of those things, like, if it just helps one kid from not taking something that they're going to get addicted to, because I think we're very fortunate. We're alive today. And a lot of people don't realize when you're young, you think you're invincible.
Oh, you sure do.
That cannot be stressed enough. Just looking back, it's just like, wow.
I'm just not ashamed of what I've done. Like, I've made choices. I've lived life to do and did what I wanted to do. You know, moving forward, I'll make different choices and do better things. But when I was in my teens and 20s and stuff, I was living, and I didn't always make the best choices for myself. But I had emotional stress and things I didn't deal with properly, and I buried it with opioids, and that's what got me, stomach issues and stuff. So now I'm learning the hard way to come out of it.
Exactly.
I'm trying to help other people realize what kind of pain you're going to go through if you do these sort of things, and try not to get other people to go through it. It's not fun at all.
I don't wish it upon my worst enemy, getting addicted to drugs.
No,
it's to that level. I don't think anybody realizes.
And the hardest thing, I think, is if you have it if it's in you and you're not fully aware and you start to use and you get on that, you fall down a path, I wasn't fully aware that my dad actually was an addict. I knew he drank, but I didn't know he used opioids. Well, I didn't know that till after I was an addict.
Drug too, though.
Right, but I didn't know till after he was an addict, because I was careful with alcohol.
Oh, okay.
But because of other stuff, I didn't. I wasn't as careful as I should have been. So that's on me, though. It's nobody else's fault.
When we're in the beginning of our addiction, it's not our fault. It's, you know what I mean. I'm being facetious.
I get it.
Somebody else has a way worse problem.
Yep.
A perfect example, I remember taking all those painkillers. I was justifying it because they were prescribed. It says take 1 Percocet or hydrocodone, Vicodin, what is it, take 1 every 4 to 6 hours. Yeah. Not take 4 to 6 every 1 hour.
Yeah.
And
it's not funny, but it's funny because it's true. It's what people do. It's how people are living and the choices that we're making, and it's not a good way to be, and then you learn the hard way from it.
And today, I don't think there's a hip-hop song that doesn't have talking about pills.
I know. Lean and pills.
Yeah, lean. And that right there brings up, that is no different from using any other. Heroin is an opioid, and a lot of people drink lean, which is promethazine and codeine. It's not a thing that's big up here, but it is. It's made its way up here. Right. I don't know. Did you ever really? That it was, from the best of my knowledge, it started in Houston. And it's
in the hip hop culture and stuff.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time. And it started in Houston, I know. Remember Paul Wall?
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about high school, man? Paul Wall.
Paul Wow.
The people's champ.
Paul Wow.
That song, Sitting Sideways.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, as far as I know, that song is about lean. Sideways, leaning. Lil Wayne. I don't think you can really think of him and not think of lean.
Yeah.
He's got the triple cup, and I definitely don't want to glorify anything.
No.
It's so embedded in the Southern culture that it's.
But I don't think people realize how much
alcohol here.
Well, right, but I don't think that's where the medicinal side of psychedelics, though, can actually help people with those opioid addictions and stuff. I use psychedelics when I left the clinic at 11 milligrams for that first full day, and it helped me get through some horrible withdrawals, but now I wasn't able to try to use any microdosing or anything for
your knowledge
post-acute withdrawal because
right.
I didn't have good enough knowledge of what it was yet, or I didn't have access to it either, though, to even get it and understand it at that time.
The knowledge of it just came out about 5 years ago.
I was back in a program for probably 8 months to a year before I really found research on it, and then was like, oh, this is something that could benefit me, and I found some good benefits and interesting things from it. But back then, I wasn't fully aware of what was out there. And that's one of the hardest things for people is if you don't know, you don't know. So if you're not aware of what's out there, you can't do anything about it.
That's why I will say, like I was talking about at the beginning, research.
Mm.
With the cell phones, there should be no reason why you don't research anything that you're ingesting in your body.
Well, what's funny is from 17 to 26 region, when I did stuff like that more for fun, I knew it wasn't addictive, and I was always careful who I would get it from so that I knew that I could trust it, but I didn't do a ton of research on it through that time. It wasn't until later in life that I actually did more into it. That was just having fun.
After the fact.
And personally, I think that everybody should have one experience with it, because the things that you see and feel and understand because you do it, you're not going to get it from anything else on earth.
No.
And it's unfortunate that because of the legality of it, so many people will never get to understand what it is and what it's about, because it's not a negative thing like people would want you to think. It's really not.
It even got me when I was young. I was scared to do it because what did you always hear about LSD?
The only things that made me worried were like the
people
silly.
Thought they could fly.
Well, the silly stories about
Propaganda.
the perma trips and stuff too, where people take it and it changes the chemistry, and then you have a constant trip forever and you never come out of it. Silly stuff like that you're just like, could that really happen? Probably not. But it makes you wonder, because if you get stuck in that state, you won't be able to live a normal life if you were on a permanent trip.
Yeah.
So.
And that is a terrifying thing. But
people do have, visual disturbances and psychosis things from it.
And like what I was saying, I thought the water that tasted, you could taste the iron in the water.
Like, I can't imagine if I were to have flashbacks to some of the really, it's hard to say, your experiences.
I don't like that word either.
I've had very good experiences. But the one experience, we did more than what we should have because nobody knew what they were doing really. It was mescaline, and we dosed quite high, and it was good for the most part, but there were some very negative parts during it. It didn't scare me away from it. It just made me be more aware next time. Don't overdo it. And if something, if you start noticing something that's really not right or out of place, like, just ask somebody around you, or make sure that you have one person with you that's normal. That's another thing we've done. Right.
Is that's probably, it's not a good term.
Experience sitter.
Somebody who is very knowledgeable. I've done it for people, and I'm more than happy to.
Yeah.
I guess it's like being a designated driver, but it definitely can be tough. A lot more responsibility than. It
can be tough when people are getting goofy to be the one that's going to bring them to normalness, but it's not that bad.
No. There's microdosing, there's macrodosing, and then there's what's called the heroic dose. That's 5 grams of mushrooms and above. And
that would be a lot.
It's especially depending on the kind of mushrooms.
Right.
But all of them have their medicinal benefits. In fact, I know somebody personally that suffered from depression, and I've known them since middle school, and they tried mushrooms a couple times when they were like, like how we were when we were kids.
Right.
And then he used them medicinally and took enough to, it was definitely a macro dose, high level. And he's thankful every day that he did it, and he's never taken them again. And his depression is gone.
That's actually what I was going to tell you about. You brought up Steve Jobs earlier. Steve Jobs didn't do it all the time, but a quote that he said was, taking LSD was one of the 2 or 3 most important things I did in my entire life. That's a quote from him.
That's awesome.
I mean, that's telling you right there, and they're discussing that, billionaires and people, because of focus. It actually does help with focus quite a bit more than what you would think it does, as long as you microdose, though.
Yep.
Because when I've done it, if you do a little too much, then you're going to have that hallucinogenic experience you're not looking for.
And you don't know, because it's not legal in our state.
But one thing, how many macrodose experiences have you had?
Oh, dozens.
Have you had one that was like negative where you would have called it a bad trip? Bad trip kind of thing.
That's a really good question, because there was one time where I had taken some, and granted, I was a kid at the time, so I was very,
How old are you?
I was 18, maybe, barely, no, 17, I think. And we were downtown, by the college kids and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine was on mushrooms, and he witnessed a car accident.
That would be a weird one on mushrooms.
It put him into an instant. He even says he locked eyes with the woman that crashed her car. And it's funny, but it's not funny. I mean, the girl was okay.
No, he
was okay.
Right.
The ambulance ended up coming there and having to treat her and him.
Oh, no.
And he was just walking on the sidewalk, and literally, I remember it plain as day, because he had left the apartment.
Mm-hmm.
He was the first one out.
Right.
And I don't know, he was walking like not even a half a block ahead of us. We were just coming out the door. And it's one of those things where it's just the wrong place at the, right time, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, it couldn't have happened, like, he looks over, and right next to him.
That would be wild, especially if you were on a psychedelic.
And I just remember he was standing there.
Right.
And, that's a lot to deal with.
So why did he get treated?
They didn't realize that he was obviously
a bystander.
I remember I had to handle the situation
to
the best of my ability. And I pretty much just said they had to explain to the paramedics that he's very shooken up.
Right.
And they just fine with it,
Yeah.
Because, that is a normal experience,
I guess.
But
of course.
I mean, being under the influence, this brings up actually a beneficial thing that psychedelics can do is empathy.
Right.
It opens up just parts in our brain where we really are putting ourselves in other people's shoes.
Yeah.
Which I think the world is really lacking more than ever.
For sure.
In this day and age.
For sure.
Especially, I want to say, since 2020. A lot of mental health.
Yeah, yeah. So, have you ever picked any to have an experience with?
Nope.
To have an experience with?
I do know that you told me some stories down in Florida.
Yeah, man. Field of Dreams. Look it up.
See, with all the knowledge I know today, I would never do that. And I advise anybody to never do that.
I was going to say that for sure. Don't ever go picking them.
In terms of, there's over 8 million different kinds of fungus,
these are
mushrooms.
very easy to find.
But they are also, there is 8 million kinds of mushrooms in the world. And there's some that literally look identical,
Right.
that are poisonous and non-poisonous. And if I put them together, you could not tell the difference.
So down there is one though that is very easy to spot, and
Which,
I mean we picked them, and they
do you
do
know
it
the name?
all the time. Psilocybin cubensis. That's what it is.
It's not like
I don't know any other name other than that.
it's not like albino
Not that I.
PNV. It's not
I'd
like
have
golden
to.
teachers.
I'd have to look it up. Like,
because that's the
I've never.
not medicinal name. That's the pharmaceutical name.
Yeah, but no, I don't.
Strain, I guess, is probably the term I'm trying to look for.
It says F plus strain, Florida's Psilocybin cubensis. Little known history of the F plus white strain.
I've heard of B pluses.
Florida white, F plus, and A plus strain, I guess, is an albino variety. Psilocybin cubensis, Florida white. It's crazy.
They probably do grow down there more than it's really humid.
Yeah, during March and April and stuff. I was down there in March.
Okay, that's prime mushroom season.
So I was down there in March, and you just, after it rains and then the next sunny day,
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's, you gotta be careful, though. You don't want to be trespassing or picking the wrong things, of course. Make sure, so here, I'll just give you, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I've tried to look up, ones in Wisconsin years ago. There's actually ones you can pick in Wisconsin. But they look so much like other ones that you're gonna make a mistake. Down there, people know what they were looking for, and they're aware of what it is. But up here, you're gonna make a mistake up here. So I know exactly what you're talking about. With one looks like another.
Yeah, and I'll say it again. I advise anybody to not. I mean, this is your life you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, if you take the wrong mushroom, you can die easily.
There is 8 million Paul Stamets. It's actually one of the best Joe Rogan episodes ever. He is considered the mushroom guy.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any more a person could know.
Right.
The guy has dedicated his whole life. He has an obsession.
See, in this, we're talking about psychedelics as a whole.
Right.
We're just discussing mushrooms because I actually was able to pick them and have an experience after picking them, which is something that not a lot of people get to do,
That is. I remember when you told me that.
I was 18 when I did that.
And that's actually a pretty cool
The Field
story,
of Dreams is on Google. You can look it up. It's a field in Sebastian,
Dreams is in Iowa, and it's...
No, it's not. It's not a baseball field. It's actually a mushroom field in Florida. Just so you know.
And what are cows doing out there, man?
I don't know, man. They're having a good time, probably.
Yeah, that is a real thing. There's a lot of animals that do eat hallucinogenic plants of many different kinds.
Right. So I don't think you answered my question about did you ever had a bad experience, though?
Well, that was probably... I really, for the most part, have not. Pretty positive, but that was a very stressful experience. And for my friend...
Your first one?
The bad trip. No, well, yeah.
I'm talking about your bad experience, yeah.
That was for a while there, but it definitely made up for it after I threw up. And... even though I was so far away from where the band was playing, when the euphoria, the good part about it, because I thought there was rust inside me, but after I vomited, it was literally almost immediately.
Right.
I can remember it like it was yesterday, and I was so young,
Right. So for me, the worst experience I had was the first time. Just that little, there was like a half-hour period my first time I can remember. But other than that, I remember I've had good experiences with it. But after that first time, I've been more aware of how to have good experiences and not let it get out of control.
You can always take more.
Well, right. but you don't want to let it get out of control.
No.
Because once you cross a line and you're starting to have a bad experience, it can be hard to come back from it if you don't have the right people around you.
Exactly.
The wrong people around you can make it worse. I've seen people elevate people's bad experiences too before. I've watched somebody really mess with people too, and that's not fun. You know, I seen one time someone was having a bad experience and they went down the basement, and then someone threw firecrackers down the basement.
Wow.
Like, I've seen some goofy stuff go on over the years, man.
You know, when you get into stuff like that, that sounds like it'd be funny for a kid, some punk kid or whatever.
Well, and that's the thing. Everybody's 17, 18, 19 years old at this time. So it is punk kids doing it.
Right, but that...
As an adult, does not sound fun at all, right? Like, it sounds like a horrible experience.
That, it would... Yeah. To say the least, I cannot imagine that.
You're doing things the wrong way. You're taking things for granted. You're not respecting what you're doing at all at that point.
No, it's, to me, that would be like how beneficial it is, and the propaganda that is so powerful for so many years. It's truly, in my opinion, from how much it helped me.
Mm-hmm.
And look at life differently. It hurts.
Right.
And it makes me angry.
Mm-hmm.
It brings up, too, the original reason. People don't even know the original reason why marijuana is illegal. Do you know the real reason?
I do, but not good enough to explain it on a show like this.
Oh, it came down to the lumber industry.
But explain it, though.
Well, with hemp, which is marijuana, you can make hemp and you can do a lot with it. You can make string, you can make necklaces, hemp necklaces. You can make paper. And how much paper do we use in a country?
Yeah.
How much in a school, in a university?
Right.
The people, and we're talking like the Rockefellers, the big shots, the people that own the oil, lumber industry, everything. Right. They got their hand in just about everything.
Yeah.
From the best of my knowledge, and it is true too. They didn't want hemp interfering with cutting down trees and making a lot of money and making paper out of trees.
Right.
So
I have heard that. I've heard it told like that before too, yeah. So that's the sole reason, though? I thought there was more to it than just that.
Well, I want to see if I'm right, because I learned this years ago, and history is written by those who have money. Reefer madness.
So then if you look at other stuff, it says concern about the rising use of marijuana and research linking its use with crime and other social problems caused the federal government to take action. So they're saying crime and social problem.
Well,
because that's what I had heard. That's what my more understanding was. But marijuana. It's obviously a factor of both. It's obviously there's hemp things going on. They're trying to shut down the hemp industry. They're trying to come at with the crimes. What year was that you're talking about?
Oh, this was in the 1930s.
Right. This actually is talking about between 1931 and 1962 is when all this was going on.
That's what I was trying to say, though. But that was a propaganda tool.
Right.
The word marijuana is a Spanish word.
Right.
They were saying that Mexicans were using it and bringing it here.
That's what, right, the crime.
To the best of my knowledge, it even got worse with the propaganda. They were saying women were being raped.
Because I had heard stories that not only Mexicans, that they had also brought it into said it was the black community as well.
Yeah, well, jazz.
So that's right. So that's where there's a lot more to it. There's a lot to it.
Heroin is really big in the jazz community. I mean, Ray Charles.
Right. So yeah, we've both definitely had some experiences with macro dosing, and it sounds like overall, though, I mean, I had one bad experience, not even a full experience, just a couple hours not a couple hours, like a half hour, 45 minutes where it got a little, it was uncomfortable, but it was also my first time and I wasn't fully aware. But once I did that, I was able to adjust. And since that time, the years have gone by and I haven't had a bad experience since that time.
You know, and I'm lucky, and I'm proud to say that I've had nothing but benefits from mushrooms, psychedelic and non-psychedelic.
So most of your experiences with mushrooms, though, right? Is that right?
Yes, because it's natural, and I'm very against anything synthetic.
Right. I've had, a few with peyote.
It's grows in Arizona.
And then couple different forms of LSD. And
No.
then mushroom.
LSD can be you don't know what you're getting now.
And that's why I don't think now I would do it anymore as far as LSD
there's so many
goes,
research
because
drugs.
the last time that I did it, I wasn't fully sure on it, and I don't feel as good about that at all anymore.
No, I don't either.
You got to stick with stuff that's natural, that is natural, and make sure that you're being safe with things. So do you have anything else you want to add about macrodosing?
It's just remember, if you're ever going to do it, go small. You can always take more, and always be with somebody who's knowledgeable about it. And research.
Right. So let's switch gears and go to microdosing now.
Okay. And
because I know this is something that you are, you're very into it, and I know you've done research on it. So let's, I have experience with it as well, and I have good experiences with it. So let's switch gears here and get into, now we're not macrodosing, we're microdosing. You're taking an amount below the hallucinogenic threshold.
Right. And there's so much beneficial things to it for microdosing that you see advertisements on Facebook constantly. Mind Bloom, I believe it's called. They're just having nothing but success.
Right. When you take a dose below the hallucinogenic threshold, it's to enhance the natural effects of it that promote focus, energy, relaxation, things of that nature.
And it's been known to be way more effective and safe as Adderall, Ritalin. That's another subject that angers me, is why that synthetic drugs that are addictive are a first, but like money comes first, baby.
Once they figure
money
out
in the bank.
How to make the money off of mushrooms, it probably will be there too. And that's what's unfortunate, is they have to figure out that first, and then they're gonna ruin it somehow. It's not gonna be the natural thing it should be by the time they're done with it.
It's always why they always have to make it into a pill, synthetic.
So what's interesting is psychopharmacology did a study, and they found that 21% of people that responded had improvements on their depression specifically, and 44% that responded had overall mental health improvements from microdosing.
I 100% did.
So that's a big 44% overall had better mental health from microdosing, specifically as a consequence of microdosing.
And that was just one study?
That was from psychopharmacology, yes.
See, I think
there's lots of different studies, so I didn't want to pull too much, but
right.
But they were all positive. The other study said 40% overall. This one said 44. They're all close in that range that I was looking at.
Absolutely, and that's all I can say. In fact, the whole point was I came off of a lot of medication, including there's medication that that is not even a narcotic, that is just as addictive
for sure
as any narcotic. I was on an antidepressant, Effexor, and the withdrawal was so...
From the antidepressant?
Yes.
What are the symptoms of withdrawal from that?
Brain zaps, to the point where they say that's normal. They're like mini quick seizures. I don't know if you've ever experienced them.
Not like that, no.
It's like your teeth chatter. It's very common.
I've heard people say that, though, but I haven't experienced that, no.
It's very uncomfortable.
I can imagine if you're a little mini stroke.
Well, yeah, it's to the point also where it's like my equilibrium
right,
was very messed up.
From my experience with microdosing, I can fully understand why people get positive benefits. If you do it right, you get improved focus, you get improved energy, you get, you're relaxed, you don't have anxiety. No. There's so much positive if you do it right. You have to make sure to dose correctly, though. You can't just be doing whatever.
Not every day because of the tolerance.
Right.
I was doing it every day. No. You can do it every day. Mike Tyson does.
But I wonder, he also probably has the means to up the dose, and maybe he takes different strains, because sometimes that might help too, to mix it up a little bit.
Typically, he's got the means to do whatever he wants.
Typically your people out on the street or your average person isn't going to have a type of connection where they're going to be able to do that sort of thing. You got to be really, again, very, very careful, because it is federally illegal still. There are states that are working on reform, and some have, but federally it's still illegal. So it's a Schedule 1. So the one thing too, though, is I want to stress too, though, is the dose when you're microdosing, because I have taken just a little too much, and just a little too much will mess up your whole microdose plan.
I did the same thing when I first started.
You'll start having a hallucination, or you will be uncomfortable because you weren't planning on that.
0.1 can make a difference.
You're supposed to weigh it out in tenths of a gram to microdose, 1/10 at a time.
There's a website that tells you how to do it.
For me, it seems to be 4/10 is a perfect microdose. If I go above that, it's too much.
4/10 of a gram?
Yeah. So not a half, like 0.4.
Okay. Yeah, see, and you put it in a capsule? See, I was putting them in
I usually put it in a smoothie and just swallow it.
Okay. See, I was putting them in time-release capsules because I was coming off of Effexor.
Right.
Weaning off of an antidepressant I had been on for many years. And I know today I wouldn't have been able to get off it successfully if it wasn't for microdosing.
Right. But, I mean, one big thing, too, though, with that is you might get weird sensations if you don't dose right, too. If you're microdosing and you start to feel really funny, those sensations, because you know how it is when you first take it.
Oh yeah.
You get those really weird sensations right away, and you kind of get uncomfortable. But if you microdose right, though, you don't really get that. If you do it the right way, you tend to not have that. You just kind of function normal. But I am so much more clear when I do it. It's amazing. And my hearing is amplified by at least 5 when I'm doing it. It's crazy, the little things I pick up on. It's really crazy.
That's why they use it for ADHD, which I am diagnosed with. I don't know. Were you diagnosed with it too?
No, my brother, but not me.
We're part of the Generation RX. You remember?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
We talked about that on on our first episode, I believe.
Right.
That was the miracle drug, Ritalin. It's not as dramatic as the movie. What is the movie I'm thinking of?
I'm not even.
Limitless.
Oh, yep. Oh, man, yeah.
It's kind of like that, but not
slightly.
Yes, that's the best way to put it. Slightly.
You notice an opening. I noticed that I'm more open. Like, I just see things and I'm focusing better.
I'm a different person.
I can zoom in on stuff.
In a good way.
Right.
And a lot of people that are afraid to take it, that have taken it before, they're afraid to face their trauma. Mm-hmm. And I know that isn't easy.
Right. So for me, like being on a program where you take a medication that makes you cloudy already, something like microdosing actually opens that up and takes that fogginess away, that cloudiness away, and then I think clearer than I have in a long time. That's where I know that how foggy being in a program can make you. Because when you take a microdose, then all of a sudden you're clear and you're thinking and hearing and seeing things that you didn't notice or hear for a long time because you're just so suppressed being medically in a program.
And that's so against the long-term effects of synthetic medications.
Right. So you started microdosing to get medicinal effects to get away from other medications because it's helping you feel better when them other medications aren't. You know,
exactly.
They're causing you to get addicted and have withdrawal where psychedelics are non-addictive. You're going to get a tolerance. I heard a thing where they were discussing where it's almost the opposite. Because you get a tolerance, you don't get the effects anymore. So if you want those positive effects, you have to take a break.
The best way to put it is look at it at like CBD and regular marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
You just get the medical benefits and not the psychoactive.
Right.
And I think people know a lot more about CBD
for sure
than marijuana today.
Yeah. Because it's been now it's more open, and I bet you in 5 to 10 years it'll be the same with psychedelics. It'll be much more open. States will have reform, and it's going to look completely different.
I can't wait for it because...
So how do you see the future of microdosing and psychedelics? Like, I see that there's actually a positive future for it as long as the research continues. Well, I'm talking about psychedelics as a whole, right?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, there's test trials for ecstasy in marriage counseling, PTSD, just about everything. We're still light years behind Canada as far as the legalization and, all of that. But I just see it getting better.
Right.
Anything natural.
For sure.
In my opinion, there's a cure for everything on this earth.
There is actually.
I think it already has been found.
I'm a firm believer in even CBD as a cure for certain things that people have not even looked into yet, that I've actually found some interesting stuff.
Right. A lot of pain, it has to do with inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
And brain fog is a bigger problem than people think.
It's a big problem. I live with brain fog pretty frequently, so
a lot of it has to do with the medication,
of course, and then my stomach
getting up early
without digesting nutrients properly. There's but that's where then I microdose though, and all of a sudden it's like I'm a younger kid again, where I'm clear. It's a clear brain. It's not foggy. It's not sleepy.
Have you tried fasting?
Yeah, I used to do it a lot. I don't right now though, but I used to a lot.
It's not easy, but it makes your brain fog. Getting through the first 2 days is not easy. That's another big thing now is fasting. Because when we were...
For a long time, I was really disciplined with it.
It becomes just like, takes 2 weeks to start any good habit.
Right.
I wish it was as easy to start with a bad habit. But
for sure.
It only takes 2 minutes to start a bad habit.
Actually, my girlfriend used to give me crap about it. She'd get a bag of popcorn at like 7 at night, and she'd be like, "Oh, that's right, you're not having any." And I'd be like, "I guess not," because I would always fast from if I remember right, I did it from 6 at night to 8 in the morning was my time. It was a 14-hour.
That's pretty good.
Mm.
In fact,
it's because of how I worked at the time. I would allow myself to eat during work and stuff, but then when I got off, I wouldn't at night, and I went into the next morning.
People don't realize that it's actually in our DNA. It wasn't until, when do you think the hunter-gatherer era ended? I want to say...
Still going on. What do you mean?
Yeah, well, there are some tough in the next few
years, we're going to end up dying off and starting over anyways. The way
reset.
We're going.
You're going to, what is the saying? You're going to own nothing and you're going to be happy or something. I don't know.
Doesn't sound good.
No, this doesn't. But
anything else that you want to add today?
Just definitely research.
Right.
And this goes with everything. Just because you hear something doesn't mean you have to believe it, regardless of who says it.
Right. That's a good Good thing to tell. Good thing to say, man.
It's we live in a time where it seems like people don't it seems like everybody wants their opinions respected, but they don't want to respect anybody else's opinion. Or just give them respect in general if they disagree with anything they say.
Right.
To me, that's radicalism. And I had nothing but benefits from it. I'm a better person today from microdosing, macrodosing. And I do want to mention, though, DMT, I don't think there's a level that can be compared with it. Like, you can put all hallucinogens together, and nothing compares to it, to the best of my knowledge. People, after they've had their DMT, which is a very short, Joe Rogan talks about it. It's basically, they call it the spirit molecule for a reason. It's, to the best of my knowledge, is you find the understanding for life. Trauma just kind of leaves your body.
Right.
Ayahuasca, Aaron Rodgers does it.
Yeah, that's one we actually haven't mentioned yet here. We get a lot more, especially in American culture, we talk a lot more about mushrooms and LSD, especially mushrooms and LSD, not even so much peyote in American culture. But that's where I was introduced, was peyote, which is crazy. That was the first thing. I actually did it. I did it completely backwards, man. I did mescaline, LSD, mushrooms. Like, instead of starting off soft, I started harder and then went to the weaker side. Yeah, and that's where it's like I did that, and then by the time I got to mushrooms, I was like, what is everybody talking about with mushrooms? But now that I'm in a different place and a better understanding, I understand it a lot better, so now I don't look at that the same.
I like that, man.
But remember that psychedelics really aren't something to play with. We've been discussing it here today. Me and JJ, we've had our experiences in the past with it. We've macrodosed. We've had some very interesting experiences. But at this point, I think I can speak for JJ and myself when I say we're both in a much better place where we are interested in the medicinal terms of it now.
Yeah.
Not in having fun with it, going out to a party with it, or going to a bar and being having that tripping experience where you're looking for the medicinal, how to heal your body, how to get focus, reduce anxiety, cure PTSD, and have just a better overall well-being because of it, not using it for fun and negative things, because it can be negative in the wrong hands.
Intention is everything.
Right, exactly.
The pre-use, before you ever take it, no matter how experienced you are, the ritual prior to taking it, the state of mind that you're in, the people that you're with, whatever you're dealing with in life is just as important as the experience itself.
Right, and that's actually one thing to mention is what's going on in your life often can dictate how your experience goes with a psychedelic.
Exactly.
You need to have your emotions and kind of know where you are when you go into it.
The best advice is make sure you're with people that you truly do trust.
Right. For sure. Because otherwise you have people throwing firecrackers in basements at people because you can't fully trust people.
I cannot imagine that,
When I think of the people that were there that night, I know why that stuff happened.
There's always going to be those kind of people.
Exactly, and I know exactly why that stuff would go on, So, do you have anything else you want to say? You good?
No, other than, as always, man, it's great coming on here. I was really stoked that you wanted to have a psychedelic conversation. You know that's right up my alley.
I know it's something that you take seriously and you're into. So yeah, I thought it would be really good to discuss, psychedelics and the benefits and even some of the negative things. It's not all positive.
Just like with marijuana,
exactly.
I don't like how they're really pushing the envelope with the THC diamonds.
Yeah.
It's like, get out of here. It's like they're trying to be the first person that ODs from it. You know what I mean?
Pretty much. It's crazy, but they are pushing it really far.
They're really messing with nature.
But we'll cross that bridge later.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy, stay humble. Make good choices for you and those around you.
Always. And do your research.
Boom.